Is this how it ends for Al Horford in Boston? A $5.1 million goodbye that no one saw coming? What if the last image of Al Horford in a Celtics jersey is him raising the championship trophy in 2024, only to vanish into the shadows of a quiet offseason? What if the final chapter of his Boston story is not a celebration, but a silent exit for only $5 million? This isn't just another veteran parting ways with a franchise. This is the emotional fracture of a Celtics core, the cold reality of cap sheets overshadowing legacy. The prediction? Al Horford, former All-Star, emotional leader, and backbone of the locker room, will sign with the Golden State Warriors in a deal so modest it barely scratches the surface of what he meant to Boston. But is that the full story? Let's rewind. The Celtics offseason has already been a whirlwind of exits, pieces of a championship puzzle tossed aside in a calculated attempt to dodge the punitive second apron, a harsh penalty that punishes long-term spending at the top tier of the NBA's salary structure. Brad Stevens made it clear, this team is pivoting, fast, ruthlessly, and maybe, some would say heartlessly. Horford is now caught in the wake of that pivot. According to SB Nation's Ricky O'Donnell, Horford is expected to accept a $5 million deal with the Warriors. That's right, $5 million. For a player who just helped deliver Banner 18, for a center who redefined longevity, reinvented his game as a stretch 5 sniper, and brought balance to a star-heavy roster. For a leader whose voice mattered more when the lights were off than on. And here's the kicker. It's not just about basketball anymore. It's about symbolism. Golden State isn't looking for a role player. They're hunting for stability. Horford fits like a glove in Steve Kerr's system, a high-Q veteran who makes split-second reads, spreads the floor, and still has enough left to anchor a defense when it matters. The trio of Curry, Green, and Butler is aging fast, would be the final piece of an Olin, one last ride type of roster. If the Warriors land him, it's not just a roster upgrade. It's a statement, one that Boston, curiously, is choosing not to respond to. And then comes the most chilling part. There might not be a plan C. League. Insiders suggest that if Horford doesn't go to Golden State, he may simply retire. No farewell tours, no final season in TD Garden, just ... silence. That raises the question, did Boston even try to bring him back? Brad Stevens hinted carefully, but clearly that Horford's time in Green is as good as done. For a front office that often speaks with calculated diplomacy, that felt like a bombshell. But why let him walk so easily? Why not offer a vet minimum to preserve continuity and honor loyalty? Is $5 million too much for a leader who gave this franchise 7 seasons, a finals appearance, and a title? Celtics' $22 million wildcard. Could this invisible asset reshape the entire roster? What if the most powerful weapon in the Celtics' arsenal isn't a superstar, a draft pick, or even a trade already made, but an invisible number buried deep in the books? A $22 million trade exception. It doesn't play minutes. It doesn't suit up. But it might be the only thing standing between Boston and a complete collapse of flexibility. The average fan shrugs off trade exceptions. They expire, they go unused, they're rarely exciting. But under the new CBA, that old thinking is dead. And here's the Zygarnik twist. The Celtics might be sitting on a gold mine that could explode the trade market next summer, and no one's talking about it. Let's unpack it. When Kristaps Porzingis was offloaded, the Celtics didn't just shed salary. They created something far more dangerous. Time-limited leverage. A $22 million trade exception, good through July 2026. That's more than a loophole. It's a disguised war chest, and in a league suffocating under second apron restrictions. It could be Boston's way to outmaneuver the entire system. Under the new CBA, cap space is more than rare. It's virtually extinct, with most teams crawling over each other to avoid the second apron. Flexibility has become the new currency. And guess who has it? Brad Stevens. It's not just about the money, it's about the timing. This exception matures while the rest of the league bleeds contracts. Desperate front offices are about to start shedding useful players just to survive. Financially, that's where Boston steps in, not as a desperate buyer, but as a team with a legal black hole to absorb distressed assets without giving up anything but space. Think about it. Brad Stevens has quietly built a trapdoor, one that leads to a full-scale roster reshaping next year without touching the core. But there's a catch. That trade exception only becomes a weapon if Boston is willing to spend again. As of now, all signs point to Scotty, and JRU holiday deals already show that ownership is looking to reset the tax. If that commitment stays firm, the exception becomes virtually unusable. No matter how valuable it could be, it dies in the books. Wasted, forgotten. So here's the real cliffhanger. Will Boston have the courage to go Elin again in 2025-26? And this brings us to Anfernee Simons. Some see Simons as a temporary placeholder, a salary filler, a trade chip. But what if he's more than that? What if keeping Simons in his $27 million contract is the key to unlocking a Together, Simons' deal plus the Przifsis exception give Boston $49 million of matchable salary in a league where almost no one else can create that kind of package without gutting their rotation. Will Georges Niang be gone before he even unpacks? Celtics' most likely trade piece is already living on borrowed time. What if the Celtics' next trade doesn't come in January or February? But before training camp even begins, what if the player Boston fans just started learning to pronounce is already halfway out the door? Georges Niang may have arrived quietly, but the whispers around him are getting louder, and they point to one unavoidable truth. He's the odd man out, and his time in Boston might already be running out before the jersey is even dry. This is not a drill. This is a calculated pivot, one that reveals the cold, strategic mind of Brad Stevens in full motion, with Jason Tatum temporarily shelved due to injury and the Celtics trimming payroll like never before. It's become painfully clear. This isn't about this season. This is a setup, a reset, a chess game measured in contracts and months, not banners or wins. So where does Niang fit? The answer is he doesn't. Niang, 32, came to Boston as part of the Porzingis trade web. But make no mistake, he wasn't the prize, he was the price. On the final year of a 3-year deal worth $25 million, Niang is essentially a rental on a rebuilding bridge. The Celtics don't see him as part of their future, and the signs are everywhere. He's a stretch 4 with proven shooting 40% from deep last season between Cleveland and Atlanta. But the Celtics already have that skill duplicated in Sam Hauser, who's younger, cheaper, and better suited to Joe Matsula's pace-on-spaced offense. Niang doesn't move well laterally. His defense is suspect, and in a system that punishes slow rotations, he's a walking mismatch, waiting to happen now. Add in this crucial detail, Niang is on an expiring contract. That means two things in the Stevens playbook: value and expendability. He's the perfect trade piece for a cap-conscious contender looking for veteran shooting without a long-term commitment. And Boston knows it, but there's more at stake here than just Niang's contract. The Celtics aren't just trimming the fat, they're betting big on youth. Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, Hugo Gonzalez, Josh Minot, all forwards, all younger, all cheaper, and all unproven. That's for wings with upside who need minutes, need mistakes, need opportunities. So ask yourself this: what does keeping Niang accomplish if the team's not all-in for 2025? What if Jaylen Brown's most transformative play didn't happen on a basketball court? At 9:30 a.m. sharp on a Monday morning, Brown walks into the MIT Media Lab, not flanked by security or team reps, but with a notebook and a purpose. He's here for the week, not as a celebrity drop-in, but as a constant, intentional leader of the bridge. His interdisciplinary program targeting Boston's most overlooked youth, not the top 1%, not academic elites, just kids with character, chosen from boys and girls clubs because they care, not because they tested well. Absurdly ambitious: AI, climate change, robotics, food insecurity, civic engagement, college prep, public speaking, STEM, philosophy, coding, chess, even social justice, and the racial wealth gap. The guest list: a jaw-dropping mixture of astronauts, athletes, rappers, entrepreneurs, and local politicians. From Michelle Wu to Jamel Hill, from Jordan Childs to Killer Mike, from NASA engineers to admissions deans. It's a mashup of inspiration and real life, access that even most college students never experience. But here's what makes it dangerous. Brown isn't just giving these students knowledge, he's giving them ownership, the power to choose their path, the belief that they belong in those spaces, not as visitors, but as future builders of a better world. Think about what's actually happening here. In a city still reeling from generational inequality, Jaylen Brown isn't just donating money. He's reprogramming what young black kids in Boston expect from their futures. In neighborhoods that have historically been boxed out of innovation, Brown is casually walking students through Google headquarters and MIT labs. He's turning chess and coding into daily activities, not extracurricular luxuries. The effect: seismic, cultural threatening, to systems that depend on gatekeeping. This is not basketball charity. This is the framework for black intellectual infrastructure in a city where tech, medicine, and finance have long kept those doors closed.